Well, I'm glad Chris pointed out that I am a forester. That sometimes gets lost in the translation. In fact, I still put that as my occupation on my tax returns. When my wife signed them the last time, she looked at me and made the remark that she hoped the rest of the term was more accurate. So, which was, as you can imagine, that was a hard remark. So, pleased to have a little time this morning to acquaint you with our company, with Resource Management Service. If you've been in the industry in Alabama for a number of years, if you got as many gray hairs as I have, you might have already had some experience with the firm. In fact, I think there have been countless foresters that came out of schools with a bachelor's degree that began their career working at RMS on the cruising team, got introduced to a few 10-day cruising trips, and that spurred them on to greater professional achievement. So, but we're happy to be here this morning. And first off, just a little history on the company. We are an Alabama firm. We were founded in 1950 in Birmingham by two gentlemen, John Bradley and Harry Murphy. You see the pictures of John and Harry in their early days. They have both passed on to a different forest, but I always wonder when you see these old pictures, you know they didn't come to work that way. But these gentlemen really instilled a lot of the values that are present in the company today. They founded RMS as a forestry-centered firm, a company that would be owned and managed by foresters. Also a company that would be strong advocates for private enterprise and for property rights. Those are values that were woven throughout the firm. In the early years, we started off as a forestry consulting company. In fact, I think John Bradley's thesis at Yale was to start a company that would offer consulting services to southern private landowners. You know, I've often marveled at the boldness that they had, that he thought he could actually get paid for giving advice to southern landowners in 1950, but I was able to do a little bit of that. We're involved in a variety of things in both with private landowners and then with the forest products industry as they move to the south. We like to say that RMS has done anything that's legal related to trees. A few of those turned out to be profitable over the years. Beginning in the mid-'80s, a new business opportunity for the company, we started expanding into larger scale industrial management. We were part of some of the early entrants in the timberland investment business, as we had a partnership with John Hancock where we were the southern manager of the lands that were acquired by Hancock as part of investments. If you look at RMS today, 2016, obviously the firm has changed, right? Today we're a company that develops and executes timberland portfolio strategies. We acquire capital from institutional investors. We package that together in different investment vehicles, acquire timberlands, and manage those for long-term investment results for those institutional investors. Our clients are some of the largest retirement plans, public and private pensions, university endowments, foundations, and other investment institutions around the U.S. and in parts of Europe and other parts of the globe. The company today has 170 employees. Over 100 of those are professional foresters. We manage timberlands that have a current market value of about $4.5 billion and a little over 2.7 million acres. The majority of that in the U.S. South are historical roots, but also assets in 4 other countries. If you're in different parts of the world, they would call those hectares. That'd be 1.1 million hectares. And if you happen to take a wrong turn and find yourself in China, that would be about 16 million mu. So they're actually different measures of land we get to deal with. The company generates over 10 million tons in harvest every year, much of that through channels where we're very active in the supply chain, arranging both the harvesting and the transportation function on those logs. One thing about the RMS today, 66 years after we were founded, many of those important cultural principles still are intact in the company, and that's very important to us. We're still an Alabama-based firm. We're still headquartered in Birmingham. We're still a company that is centered around things you do with trees. We're a forestry-centered firm. We're still owned by the employees. We have 36 of the employees are also the owners of the company. So we continue to be owned and managed by foresters. We continue to be strong advocates for private enterprise and for the freedom to exert economic gain through the property rights on these lands that we manage. You see there, again, Alabama roots, but now those roots have spread around the world. We have business in southern Brazil, where we're managing, maybe surprising to you, loblolly pine, a business where we sell to domestic processors who feed both the domestic markets in Brazil, but also active exporters of those products outside the world. So in New Zealand, we manage radiata pine on the south end of the North Island. If you know a little bit about New Zealand, that's primarily exported, most of that in log form, serving markets primarily in Asia, Japan, Korea, and China, but an export-oriented business. Our business in Tasmania are eucalyptus plantations that, again, are primarily exported into the Asian markets. In 2010, we made an investment in southern China, a eucalyptus business that is primarily used for veneer and plywood for the construction industry inside China. You can tell from those early days and those roots in what was a log cabin office off Highway 280 in Birmingham, the company has spread and grown into things I believe that John and Harry would have been surprised with. So, the company's had a culture of innovation. If you look over the history, we've been fortunate to be involved in changes in our industry. In 1958, working with Charlie Tarver, who was with Travelers at the time, the company helped develop some of the first loans that actually looked at timberland as collateral. Before that, timberlands were just wild lands that bankers wouldn't even loan you money on. So from that, the company was involved in a lot of innovations in timber cruising. I recall looking at an old company brochure where we had one floor of the log cabin office in a computer, in a mainframe computer that was to be able to use that to work up cruises so that you could spend 6 days in the field for every 1 day it took to work up a cruise. The company was involved in prism sampling in the early days. We were, as we mentioned, in the early parts of timberland investments, working with Hancock to develop that business. And then in 2006, the company was able to lead the transaction. It was the third largest land transaction in U.S. history, behind Louisiana Purchase in Alaska. That was when we acquired, a little more expensive than those two. We acquired IPs, the bulk of their lands in the U.S. South. I think many of you are familiar with that. We made the first institutional investments in China. Again, in 2010, acquired investments in southern China, working to exchange some of the trade flows between the countries that way. We just last year have launched the first open-ended vehicle that will allow institutional investors to participate in timberland ownership, but when it's time for liquidity, it doesn't trigger the sale of assets. This evergreen fund structure allows them to move in and out through the acquisition and sale of interest. We believe that's something that will hopefully promote additional stability in land ownership and kind of support an operating model in the business more so than just land trading. Finally, we are currently involved in a project. You can see the map up there. Some of you may be familiar with this, but what we're trying to establish is a 200,000 acre longleaf restoration project in the panhandle of Florida and here in Baldwin County, Alabama. We've made some good headway. We believe it's something that is good business, but something also that produces some meaningful conservation outcomes. So the company has always kind of had that spirit of innovation. If you're a small company like RMS, you know, we've never been too big to fail. The government would never bail us out if we got in trouble. But to be able to recognize new opportunities and have the ability to pursue those with the confidence that we can execute those has been a hallmark of the firm. Also, a strong commitment to stewardship. Of course, that means the forest first. As Chris mentioned, I serve as chairman of the board of Sustainable Forestry Initiative. All of our lands are certified to a credible third-party standard, no matter where they are. Stewardship's been a hallmark of the firm since the early days. I mentioned John Bradley charging advice for Southern landowners in the 50s. And if you knew Mr. Bradley, this probably makes sense, but in early management plans, he included a stewardship statement that was from a Chinese philosopher from about 300 BC, which really made me wonder how he got those landowners to pay him for a management plan. But beyond stewardship of the forest, we're stewards of landowner rights. The company's very active, have an active voice in advocacy. We participate at the national level through the National Association of Forest Owners. We participate across the South in the state associations. And I will tell you, we're blessed in Alabama with a number of things, and one of those is to have really strong leadership and a strong association. We very much appreciate the work that Chris does. Me personally, I can not toss and turn too much at night wondering what's happening in Montgomery, because we know we have a lot of good people on top of that. I wish I could say that about Washington, D.C. And finally, we are stewards, we believe, of the forestry profession. The founders, John and Harry, were strong advocates around the company's obligation to do things to support the growth and development and the health of our profession. We encourage our employees to be involved in a variety of professional associations. And just recently, the company has taken a step to do something that I'm reasonably proud of. We have actually committed to a minority scholarship program at the premier university in the state, at Auburn, and a pretty good university in a bordering state at Mississippi State, where over the next couple of years we'll develop full ride, $25,000 a year scholarships, 4-year scholarships for minority students in forest management. And we hope that's something that will grow and be a continuing part of the firm to increase diversity, which can be a good thing, and provide opportunities for an underserved part of the community in our profession. So finally, I'll just end on a personal note. As a forester, as a forest landowner myself personally, and as someone who's had the pleasure to lead a forestry company, I've got a lot at stake in this industry. And I can tell you it's encouraging to me to see a group with the breadth that's represented here in the association, people who have long commitments to the success of our industry, people that are looking to work together for solutions. And I didn't think I could be any more all in terms of our business until about 5 weeks ago, when I've got a future forester in my house. So my interest has been expanded a couple of rotations in our industry. It's my youngest son. He started at State in forest management. He will be graduating, we hope, in about 4 years. And his mother and I would be very pleased if someone out here would be thinking about an employment opportunity for him sometime. So with that, that's a little introduction of RMS, and I'll turn it back over to Chris. Thanks. That's great.